We as parents, in our anxiousness for our kids to be successful adults, we add activities to our kids' schedule, like extra tutors and extra club sports and a very academic or achievement focused activities. And we're overlooking those activities that actually build character and the human being parts of them that are the real things that create future success: healthy relationships, strong communities, sense of identity and self, confidence, those kinds of things.
Hello and welcome to the Sunshine Parenting Podcast, where each week we talk about ideas for raising kids who become thriving adults. I'm your host, Audrey Monkey. Here on the podcast, I share my experiences raising 5 kids who currently range in age from 16 to 26 and working with thousands more as a summer camp director over the past 3 decades. I'm the author of Happy Campers, and I frequently do workshops with parents, teachers, and summer camp professionals about social skills, connection, and happiness, topics I researched extensively for my master's in psychology. If you want tools for raising kind, optimistic, self-reliant kids who become thriving adults, you've come to the right place. Hey, Sunshine Parenting listeners, welcome to episode 130. Today, I've got a great conversation to bring you with my friend Sara Kuljis about uncluttering our families and our homes. So we're talking about both psychological clutter and actual clutter. But before we get to this week's interview, I want to let you know about some new features I'm adding to the Sunshine Parenting Podcast starting this week. Stick around after my chat with Sara for 2 new podcast segments, My Favorites and Listener Questions. And here's a little something new before this week's interview. I really enjoy researching and sharing simple things we can do to make our lives easier or bring just a little more happiness and connection to our families, our workplaces, and just everywhere. So my sticky note solutions and one simple thing strategies that are at the end of each chapter of my book have been really popular. So I thought I'd start sharing more of these ideas here on the podcast. So here's a simple thing you can try this week. My one simple thing tip is called a wow. A wow is just a fun, campy name for a written compliment. We keep a bulletin board at camp on the ramp up to our dining area, and kids and counselors leave little notes or compliments for each other on the board throughout the day. The wows range from just expressing gratitude for the person in general to specific compliments about character traits. The really best wows are very specific about things that they've seen in another person, really great character strengths. My one simple thing for you this weekend, or the challenge for you, is just to take a minute to write a quick sticky note wow to your child, telling them about one of the things you really appreciated about them. Leave it on their bathroom mirror or pillow and make their day happier. And now let's get to this week's interview. If you're a regular listener, then you are familiar with today's guest, Sara Kuljis. Sara and her husband, Steve, are the owners and directors of Yosemite Sierra Summer Camp and Emerald Cove Day Camp. Sara is also a certified Gallup Strengths Coach, as well as a parenting educator who frequently does workshops and trainings in Southern California. She's also a popular presenter at camp industry conferences on topics related to youth development. And now is my chat with Sara about uncluttering our families and our homes. Well, it's just been way too long since I last had my buddy Sara on, so she's back today. Welcome back, Sara.
It's good to be with you.
We've missed each other.
We have. I told Audrey this morning that I actually listen to her podcasts when I haven't seen her for a while because it makes me feel like I've been with her. So it's good to be with you in person.
I know. Well, we are talking about something that you and I have talked about at length off off recording. And it's just kind of this whole thing about how, life is so busy and chaotic. And so we have to be really intentional about making it not that way. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about uncluttering our schedules and our homes. And this was your idea, Sara, and you always have great ideas. And so that's why I have you on here to talk about this.
Well, I hope it's worthwhile.
I think it will be. I think spring is a time, in my area, it's starting to get warmer. There's some flowers blooming outside. Always feels kind of like a fresh start. So I think one way, they always talk about like spring cleaning. And I think we can think about this as sort of our psychological spring cleaning or whatever you want to call it. So let's talk first about your thoughts about uncluttering our own and our family's schedules.
Well, this is something that is a big deal to me. And I've been speaking on this and coaching on this, and then also trying to really do this myself for the last few years. The reason being that when our schedules are so packed and we and our children are racing from one thing to the next, it really is hard, I believe, perhaps even impossible, to be the parent we want to be, the spouse we want to be, the family we want to be, because we love others slowly. We don't love others quickly. We serve each other slowly, not quickly. We empathize slowly, not quickly. Some of the best things in life have to be slowed down enough to do well. And I know that at summer camp, and Audrey, you have mentioned this as well, we have kids show up for their 2 weeks at camp and they're just exhausted. They've had no downtime, no unorganized playtime, no just hanging out with mom and dad time. They're as exhausted as I am after a heavy duty month of work. And that is not our best space in which to grow and learn and thrive. So we kind of came up with a process to help us figure out maybe how to declutter schedule. Do you want me to jump in?
Well, yeah, I just, as a side note, we have talked about this before, but it's been a really long time and we're going to go a little deeper today. And it's also in my book, your thing, it's called Sara's Pace and Space, I think is the questionnaire.
Yes,
but
pace and space.
I think it's in the back of the book and it's also in the resources because it's just one of my favorite tools that you've provided us with, which is just this way of just kind of assessing things. So yeah, just go for it. Tell us about your kind of questions you ask and how you encourage us to unclutter our family's schedules.
Well, we have to start kind of at the foundation, and that is around some thoughtfulness about what really are each of our family values. And by family values, I mean, what really are the things our family stands on? What do we hope our family is known for? What are the qualities that we really earnestly want our kids to be learning? In fact, let's provide that values worksheet in the show notes as well. But, is generosity something that we really want our kids to learn and our families to be deeply grounded in? Is it adventure? Is it service? Is it diversity? Is it respect? Is it resiliency? There are just a number of amazing, amazing qualities that we can build to our family culture if we do it intentionally. And working with your partner, spouse, with your kids, involving everybody's voice, maybe identifying 2 or 3 values that for this year are going to be the hallmarks of your family. Now that takes a little bit of time and it's actually a pretty fun process. I've been surprised sometimes at what my kids will say is their important value, because it wasn't really on my top 10 perhaps, or my top 5. But when I see where they are developmentally in their life, sometimes you want to change it up and say, you know what, I really want to honor that. let's focus on that too. And you've had conversations, Audrey, with your kids about family values, right?
Well, yeah. And actually, as you were talking, I was just thinking about, I really like kind of like mottos or like choruses to songs. I think we've talked about this before, but I remember watching a Gretchen Rubin Facebook Live, and she was talking about having a family motto. And you know how, always like camps and schools and people, businesses have taglines or vision statements. It's kind of fun to think about, what would your family's motto be? And that's kind of like more fun than maybe just saying, what's more important to you this year, generosity, or, you know what I mean? Like, I think it makes it kind of fun, and maybe that's a way. And like you said, it could just be an annual thing. It doesn't have to be like, this is our thing forever.
Right.
But
right.
but I love that idea of making it sort of a fun statement that we remember. What I was telling you before is when I, I think I learned from you. I was like, oh yeah, what does our family value? What are we known for? And I asked my kids, because honestly, I was like, I don't know. What do they think we're known for? And I can't remember who said it, but they said grit, God, and gratitude.
Hooray. What a top three, man.
I
That's
was like,
awesome.
okay, that's pretty fun. And I don't know if that's because we had been talking about like, we had done gratitude journals or something, but I thought that was really fun. And then another thing there was a country music song that I still just love. It's called Love Like Crazy. And the chorus of it is, be a best friend, tell the truth, overuse I love you, go to work, do your best, don't outsmart your common sense, never let your praying knees get lazy, and love like crazy. I love that song. I still love it. I got a picture, a big print, like a poster of a picture of all the kids in my family, and put those words over it. And they all just like teased me about it because, they thought it was cheesy, but I like it. It's relegated to the garage now, but so I like that process of picking, what you're going to be known for this year or forever. So what are some strategies that you suggest to families to like go about coming up with your favorite values?
Well, a couple suggestions would be, one is by looking back together. And it's fun to kind of reminisce as a family about events or activities or moments in the past year or two where everybody just so enjoyed it. What about that was really fun? Was it because it was really adventurous? Was it because everybody played a part in it? Was it because you got to be maybe you got to be creative together, or you got to include people who aren't always included? It's fun to look back and identify with your family what was special about it, and maybe that's going to be one of the values you make sure keeps showing up for your family in the months and years ahead. Another way would be to sit down with a values worksheet, a list of some really terrific family values. And you could even, if you've got younger kids, you can make it a much smaller list. Maybe there's 10 or 12 things like openness or leadership or kindness. And out of those, you together agree on one or two that you're going to stand on. Another way would be to talk about people or families you admire and why you admire them. And maybe we get to adopt or copycat some of those families that just are the kind of people we want to be. And so those would be three suggestions. What comes to your mind, Audrey?
Oh my gosh, I love those suggestions so much. I really like that whole what do you admire about like another family, because it's so true that really we learn how to be our best by kind of seeing other people and getting mentored by them. So what better way than like if you have a family that that just seems to really have a lot of fun together. Well, what do? Maybe we want to do that too. I love that idea. That's so great. Yeah, I really think you kind of covered a lot of ideas. I mean, this is kind of more your expertise than mine. That's why I always ask you about it. But I do, I think that once we have this, so say we know that, kindness is something that we want to kind of promote more in our families. Well, how does that translate then? Like how does your schedule come into play when you're talking about values?
Well, I think, frankly, Audrey, this is the hard part. It's a really hard part. I think it's helpful to look at the calendar of a given week or month, and together, or again, with your partner, look at the balance of activities, and mark the ones that actually match with those values. It's a little scary to look at a months of activities and realize that only one thing our family did, or our kids were involved in, or I was involved in, actually supported that value. All the rest were very busy and demanding things, but they didn't actually help move our family along in that value. So that indicates, our activities are not reflecting our values. Sometimes looking at that week or month of an activity schedule, and noting where are the gaps of downtime, so that we can make time for some intentional, say, kindness, if that's our value. How do we show kindness to our neighbors? Additional kindness to new people at school who are just joined our school, kindness to our relatives, making something and going and visiting grandma when it's a little farther away. If there are no gaps of downtime in our schedule, then it's kind of impossible to build in activities that move those values forward. Sometimes we, as parents, and we've talked about this in other podcasts, but we as parents, in our anxiousness for our kids to be successful adults, we add activities to our kids' schedule, like extra tutors and extra club sports and a very academic or achievement focused activities. And we're overlooking those activities that actually build character and the human being parts of them, that are the real things that create future success: healthy relationships, strong communities, sense of identity and self, confidence, those kinds of things.
Oh, I definitely agree. But I have to say, just looking back at my family and when all the kids were home, our schedule was just, I always looked at it and thought, all these pursuits are just kind of like selfish pursuits. It's like playing a sport, doing our homework, getting ready for college. It's like, I used to look at that and be kind of frustrated. I'm sure a lot of families feel that way too. Recently, I had this wonderful woman, Natalie Silverstein, on the podcast. She talked about this book she wrote called Simple Acts of Service. And it was so inspiring because she talks about how just kindness and generosity don't have to be these huge, like big efforts. And they can be, simple things like you mentioned a neighbor. If you're making some cookies, just set aside a plate and walk it next door. Or just like, she really makes it so doable, but you have to be intentional to like add those things in. So she was suggesting, like, if your child's having a play date, just have some element where they do something kind within that. And it could just be something that, like, making cards for, people deployed military. It can just be, it doesn't have to even you don't even have to leave home to do it. But it was really inspiring because I think sometimes I always thought things needed to be grand gestures, but a lot of times what our kids will remember might be more of the simple gestures.
That's brilliant. I think that's super important to remember. Most things aren't grand. Most of life is everyday. And so how do we make these things an everyday moment? And gosh, I really appreciate that. I need to read that book.
It's so good, Sara. I'll just give it a little pitch. It's a very short book. And basically, it's not even really that much reading. It's a lot of ideas and lists. And she even includes in the back a whole bunch of like calendared items that happen every year. So like things that you can celebrate or do something kind about in January, February, March, every month. And so many of her things, I was just like, oh my gosh, I wish I had had this when my kids were little, because I felt like some guilt that we weren't doing enough, like service, volunteering, the kinds of things that I really enjoy doing and wanted to do more of, but found that it was hard to find the big chunks of open time with all the kids and their different things going on. So I just think that it doesn't have to be something that makes you feel bad. I think if you're wanting to be, more generous or show more kindness or instill that value more in kids, I think it can start very, very small and not be just as daunting as sometimes we make it for
I
ourselves.
agree. I think that's brilliant. And I think as we're looking at trying to not just add more activity onto an already full schedule, I would urge us to not add anything unless we cut something out. Um,
Hmm.
that's just more stress, more anxiety, more feeling overwhelmed. There are activities we do because that's what everybody does. And I remember back when my kids were a little bit younger and I had a commitment that I kind of decided unilaterally, and then everybody joined in gratefully. But all my kids were only going to have 2 activities outside of school. They needed some downtime, and that might be scouts and piano, or Bible study and art class, or dance or something. And so it was just, but with 3 children, that's 2 activities each. So I had 6 extracurricular activities, and
Hmm.
that was all I could do. And so on the days though that they were home and had downtime and got to be creative and not always on the screen and that kind of thing, one challenge was that no other kids were around to play with.
Mm.
But that was good because it built a little bit of their own, enjoying themselves time. But one of the things that we really butted up against so often was, but everybody's doing cotillion, but everybody's doing NCL, but everybody's doing this, tutoring program or this driving class, and it was really, really hard to be really disciplined to step back and say, is that what our family should be doing? It is a good thing, but is this what we're supposed to be doing now? And we would have to kind of continue to say no to things and only thoughtfully add new activities.
Oh, that's so smart. Okay, well, this was a really good transition because we've talked about kind of uncluttering our schedules to be more in alignment with our values. What about, you were talking about like if you're adding activity, taking something out. What about applying this in our homes? How can we kind of unclutter our homes while also teaching our kids some important skills?
That's such a good question. So often I feel like it's only my job as the mom to declutter the house, and that's just too overwhelming for me. So I really do think it's a skill that we can teach our children, and it's actually way more fun to declutter together than all by yourself. And so I would suggest that during this springtime that we consider spending even only an hour and inviting our kids to help choose something to declutter. For example, maybe it's clothes, but maybe it's sports equipment, maybe it's the garage, maybe it's toys. My family has a craft dresser. It's an old dresser and just packed with craft supplies that some we haven't used in 12 years. And by putting on some good music and together for an hour, we either all go to our closets or we all meet in the garage. And together, let's make a pile of what is too old and needs to be thrown away, a pile that is really in good condition. Let's bag it or box it well and give it away. And then now I have really thoughtful things I'm keeping with more space around them. I think we can, the fun part is building in the piece of who do we give it to. And so in addition to helping my kids learn to declutter, now they're also getting to practice some generosity steps. Is this going to go just to the general local thrift shop? That's great. That thrift shop will sell things and use that money for good. So that's very fine and meaningful. But there might be a neighbor on the street who would really appreciate that sports equipment. Or I might donate my sports equipment back to my team because there's probably a player who can't afford a new lacrosse stick. Or even, and this is what my daughter has most enjoyed, is giving her clothes that she no longer wears to her younger cousin. And oh, that cousin lights up when she gets her big cousin's clothes. It's really a sweet gift, and it didn't cost anybody anything, and everybody is happier, and the closet is emptier. And so those would be just, it's just a simple thing. It could even be the pantry. It could be the junk drawer in the kitchen. It could be any number of things, and involving our kids and keeping the time short. It's not an all day thing. And modeling for our kids how to give things away and clean out. Have you done any of those kinds of things with your kids, Audrey?
I've never done the group clean out, although my husband and I have done like the garage together or something like that. But the kids individually have all like kind of learned to do that. Maybe it was from me, I don't know. But a lot of times I just notice, like in transition times, they'll often kind of clean and organize and purge. We have these family friends, and it's just works out perfectly that for my girls, all of their nicer things like formal dresses, those kind of clothes that you hardly wear and they're in great shape, but you outgrow them. We have a family that those go to. And then the same family has a son who's younger than my sons. And so same thing. So the nicer things that are still in really good condition have a great place to go. And same thing. Oh my gosh, when we deliver those, they get super excited. So I think that is a really fun experience for all of us to see things getting used, because it's kind of a shame and you feel so wasteful, these really nice things that aren't being used anymore. So, but I think that, we have never done the whole group thing. And I really like that idea. And even if we just did 30 minutes and each just picked what thing we were going to organize and came up with one bag to donate or declutter the house with, if you do that a few times, that would really move the needle and make your home just feel kind of less cluttered.
Absolutely. And especially with younger kids, doing it together, models for them, and you can coach them on, well, no, you can't give one glove away. You've got to give both the gloves away kind of thing. As my kids are now 2 in college and 1 in high school, they do declutter mostly on their own. And it's usually like right before you head back to school this year, you got to go through your room and, let's pull stuff out and give stuff away. And sometimes it's really fun because they'll be really specific. This is who is going to get this, this old Halloween costume or this, hat or whatever. And I like when they're particular with who they want to give it to. I think that's sweet.
I love all of these ideas. So this has been so much fun. I hope that our little conversation has inspired some people to do a little bit of uncluttering this spring, whether it's the schedule and activities and time we're spending together as a family, or our actual physical space that we're in. Because I really am a believer that, outer order leads to inner calm. And so I think this is a great, great practice. So we'll have to report back on what we do this spring.
Yes, let's do that.
To unclutter. Maybe I'll share some photos. I've done that before, where I've shared my desk before and after one of my organizational cleanups, because I tend to get a lot of piles of papers and books, if you can imagine.
I can imagine. Me too.
What are you going to try to unclutter this spring, Sara?
Well, I do have my I can't say annual because we don't do it every year, but next month in March, my sister and I are doing our sort of annual closet swap party, where we invite so many people, 70, 80 women over to bring clothes that are in good condition they don't wear anymore, and we make a party out of it, which forces us to really thoughtfully go through our stuff and take things out that we might not want to maybe take to a thrift shop, but we'll take it to a party. And one room is pants, and one outside in the backyard, it's dresses and suits, and one room is accessories, and one room is shirts. And everybody just shops then. All the bedrooms are try-on stations. We have snacks and beverages, and all afternoon we just swap clothes. We usually end up with 20 to 25 trash bags full of leftover clothes then. And we divvy those up amongst different charities, one that might need back to work clothes for, women coming back in the workforce, or maternity clothes for some of the women in the neighborhood, in the low-income neighborhoods, or down at Camp Pendleton. And so then we divvy all those donations out. But it's a blast of a party, and you get to not expand your carbon footprint. You get to reuse and recycle and So that is coming up this month. I usually spend a little bit of time on that, and that will be probably my big spring cleaning.
Oh yeah, because you'll get your closet completely cleaned out. Such a fun idea. And as you were talking, I was thinking, oh my gosh, you could do that with books. I need to do that with books.
Yes.
With kids and their toys, like once they get old enough or something. Wouldn't that be fun to do a toy swap or something with kids?
I think that would be great. I've been to one that was a what would you call it? House decor swap.
Ooh.
The stuff you used for Easter and Valentine's Day for too many years. You brought that, and usually those things are in lovely condition, right? Because they're seasonal, and they were all over this house. And then you just brought stuff, and then you took stuff, and it was really fun.
That is so awesome. Okay, well, we're going to wrap up this episode because as usual, we just keep on chatting, but this has been so much fun. I am inspired and just love your ideas. So thank you so much for being on today, Sara, to chat about uncluttering.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm inspired too. We've got some accountability here, Audrey. We've got to report back.
Yep, we'll do before and after pictures for sure.
Awesome.
I hope you enjoyed my chat with Sara. I always leave these conversations feeling inspired and like she spurred on even more great ideas for us to try with our families. And now it's time for my favorites. One of my favorite things that I'd like to share with you this week is another podcast that I really enjoy listening to. It's the Before Breakfast podcast with host Laura Vanderkam. She shares practical tools to help us feel less busy and get more done with simple time management strategies. What I really love about this podcast is its format. It is Monday through Friday, and it's only 6 or 7 minutes long. So I listen as I'm getting ready and just feel like a little spark of insight and encouragement as I start my day. I really enjoy getting questions from listeners via voicemail or email. If you'd like to send me a question, you can reach me at audrey@sunshine-parenting.com or by using the voicemail recorder on my website. Here's this week's listener question. Should I be concerned that my 13-year-old daughter has only a few friends and prefers not to go to big social events? I have a couple thoughts for this parent. First of all, as long as your daughter is happy and adjusted and seems to be doing fine in most areas of life, it really doesn't matter how many friends she has. In fact, for many kids, they'll have a more positive experience in middle school and high school with a few really good friends than a vast network of shallow friendships. Another thing I think it's worth pointing out to this parent and any other parents who have children whose social habits differ from their own is just to remember that each of us is different in the way we want to interact with friends and our world. Some of us are more extroverted and really like being in big groups of people and out at loud parties, while others of us really get re-energized and prefer one-on-one conversations and more quiet settings. So it's a really great thing when your child is in that adolescent age for them to really own what they like. It's absolutely fine to be the kind of person who prefers deep conversation with one or two people over shallow, vast social networks. And in fact, we all can probably find that there's a lot of positive aspects of that. So I would not worry about a child who has fewer friends, as long as you're seeing that those are positive relationships and that your child is adjusted and happy. As always, you can find notes, links, and other resources related to today's conversation by visiting my website at sunshine-parenting.com. While you're there, be sure to sign up for my email list so that you don't miss out on any of the great resources I have available for raising thriving kids. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd really appreciate you sharing it with a friend. please take a moment to give Sunshine Parenting a rating or review on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. Let's end with a quote from my book, Happy Campers. Kids thrive with structure for the same reason most adults do. When we know what to expect, we feel less stressed and more relaxed. The unknown causes stress, and there are many unknown things in life for which we cannot prepare. While the process of setting up structure, rules, and routines in your family might stress you out if you are a parent with a more free-flowing personality, know that you are taking an important step for your children's well-being by bringing calm and predictability to your family's daily life. If our kids can depend on some predictability and structure in that very important place called home, we provide them a safe, calm buffer against a chaotic world. I'm Audrey Monkey. Thank you for joining me for the Sunshine Parenting Podcast. Join me again next week for more conversations about raising kids who become thriving adults.